context of conflict-affected regions that we are going to be specifically discussing. My name is Hlengiwe Dube, and I am will be moderating this discussion. I'm based at the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. Just about the Center for Human Rights, we are based at the university, like I've just said, University of Pretoria here in South Africa. We're an academic institution that offers academic programs in human rights. And we are also a civil society organization that advocates for human rights across the continent, including human rights in the digital space. So today we are joined we are collaborating with Access Now on this particular initiative. And Access Now is a global organization that is dedicated to defending human rights in the digital space, focusing on protecting individuals and communities at risk in the digital age. And they use a combination of technical support, strategic advocacy, grassroots grant making, and events such as RightsCon, which some of you probably have heard of or attended, and engages on a wide range of topics at the intersection of human rights and technology. Access Now operates with the grassroots to global model, and has regional centers in Africa, in Asia Pacific, in Central Asia, in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Middle East, North Africa. So basically, you find them everywhere, driving the digital rights agenda on this global scale. So right into the conversation of today, we are seeing like this concerning rise in internet shutdowns, and particularly in 2024, we saw a record-breaking trend, which is very unfortunate. And as we shall hear from Felicia from Access Now, that over 290 shutdowns occurred globally, and this impacting 54 countries, which is very sad, depending on how much we depend, considering how much we depend on the internet. And the drivers of these shutdowns are varied, across the different countries. Sometimes it's, protests or, elections, or even examinations. But what is most disturbing is that, these shutdowns are now a leading catalyst of human rights violations. And as we see today, these shutdowns often coincide with situations where ordinary people, they are most vulnerable during the war or violence and unrest. Their vulnerabilities is also increased, and also obscuring, chances of getting critical information, and also preventing humanitarian efforts, and shielding, in a way, perpetrators of violence from accountability as well. And, on the continent here, we're also seeing that, the trend is also growing on the continent, and a number of countries, as we are going to hear from Felicia, have also been affected, from, Mozambique, Sudan, DRC, Ethiopia, and they've left, millions cut off from vital communication and access to life-saving information as well, and also international support. So today's webinar aims to explore, this escalating crisis, and we'll discuss the relationship between internet shutdowns and conflict and their impacts on conflict-affected populations, and the challenges really of dictating, monitoring, and reporting these shutdowns, especially in regions where access to independent verification is also very limited. So we are honored today to be joined by very eloquent speakers in this particular area. The Commissioner, Honorable Commissioner from the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, Commissioner Olvina Topsesonu, Felicia from Access Now, Razan from Sudan, and Henok from Ethiopia, Asain from DRC. They'll be taking us through, this conversation, guiding us through this conversation. And once again, I thank you for joining us, and really look forward to engaging with you today on these particular issues. So we are going to just have a brief keynote address from the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, which is a mandate, a special mandate of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which looks into issues of freedom of expression, access to information online and offline, and they have engaged with issues of internet shutdowns as well. So we thought it was a befitting gesture to have the special rapporteur taking us through, this conversation today. Commissioner Topsisunu is a citizen of Mauritius, and she's a commissioner at the African Commission, focusing on freedom of expression and access to information as the special rapporteur. And she's also the vice chairperson of the working group on extractive industries as well. She's a member of the working group on death penalty, extrajudicial, summary and arbitrary killings, and enforced disappearances in Africa. She's also a member of the resolutions committee. She is a lawyer with great expertise in international maritime law, and she's currently working as a parliamentary counsel at the Attorney General's office in Mauritius. Commissioner, over to you, and thank you once again for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jubi. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to participate and deliver this keynote address today during this very important discussion on internet shutdowns and their impact on human rights in conflict-affected countries in Africa, which has been convened by the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria, as well as Access Now. I take this opportunity to extend my sincere thanks to the organizers for convening this webinar, which I am confident will yield very fruitful discussions and hopefully make recommendations on how to address this prevailing occurrence. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Commissioner Ulrina Girisha-Topsisunu. I'm the Special Rapporteur. I'm with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and I am the Special Rapporteur from Freedom of Expression and Access to Information. This mandate has been set up by the Commission to oversee the implementation of Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, this webinar has been convened to discuss internet shutdowns and their impact on human rights in conflict-affected countries in Africa, focusing on how internet shutdowns are impacting on ongoing conflicts in Africa. As you are all undoubtedly aware, internet shutdowns and related restrictions of social platforms have become increasingly popular, with a reported number of shutdowns increasing every year. Internet shutdowns are increasingly becoming the norm across Africa. During periods of demonstrations, for example, during political demonstrations or during election periods. However, a number of countries have begun restricting the internet to curb cheating during school exams, as you have addressed. Regardless, whatever the reason behind the shutdown, they are increasingly being recognized as harmful. In this regard, it is important to clarify what we are referring to. This discussion is in reference to the deliberate restriction of the internet with the aim to prevent or curtail the flow of information via the internet, which is often orchestrated by some form of authority. The restriction might be general, cutting all access to the internet, or specific to certain social media applications. For example, Nigeria famously blocked access to Twitter, now known as X, in 2021. A recently released report by Access Now entitled Emboldened Offenders, Endangered Communities, Internet Shutdowns in 2024 documented no less than 296 shutdowns in 54 countries around the world, which represented an increase from the number of total shutdowns reported in 2023. The report also highlights that internet shutdowns were reported in 18 African countries, specifically Sudan, Tanzania, Senegal, Chad, Ethiopia, Kenya, Mauritius, Mauritania, Mozambique, Uganda, Algeria, Burundi, Comoros, Equatorial Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Nigeria, and Rwanda. The impact of these shutdowns can be far-reaching, particularly given the rise of the digital economy. For example, it was reported that between 2020 and 2023, 22 African countries experienced internet restrictions, partial shutdowns, and complete blackouts, which resulted in an estimated $3.9 billion in economic losses. A citizen in Nigeria observed that, and I quote, the sudden ban of Twitter highlighted the interconnectedness of individuals and businesses in the digital realm, where disruptions to online platforms can have far-reaching consequences on livelihoods. It goes without saying that the impact of shutdowns is greatly magnified in the context of conflict. In Sudan, which has been experiencing an armed conflict since 2023, access to the internet was interrupted in mid-2024 for around 10 days. The impact of this shutdown was described by a humanitarian aid worker who noted the following, and I quote, because of the internet shutdown, we are unable to communicate with our volunteers. We are unable to buy food, medicine, and deliver these services to those in need. Most of our soup kitchens in the greater Khartoum are cut off and therefore not working, unquote. A Sudanese civilian expressed similar concerns on the dire situation, and I quote, due to war, using online banking apps for transactions has gained popularity given the lack of liquidity. Now, however, we are almost starving because of this shutdown. As we can't even buy food and medicine, all my interactions during business and online courses have come to a stop too, unquote. Furthermore, internet restrictions have the effect of curtailing efforts to report on the conflict, with the result that serious and massive human rights violations occur with impunity. As observed in a press release issued by Access Now, the internet blackouts are doing their job and providing cover for the military's violent takeover and hijacking of a possible democratic future for Sudan. Undoubtedly, the impact of internet shutdowns can be far-reaching, with the effects being exacerbated during periods of conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights provides that every individual shall have a right to receive information, in addition to the right to express and disseminate his opinions within the confines of the law. In light of the fact that 54 African states have ratified the African Charter, one would presume that states would recognize internet shutdowns as violations of these core rights. In order to elaborate on the scope of the rights of freedom of expression and access to information, particularly with regards to the interface between Article 9 rights and the internet, the Commission adopted the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information during its 65th ordinary session in 2019, which establishes and affirms the principles related to the rights to freedom of expression and access to information. In Principle 38.1, specifically, the Declaration provides that states shall not interfere with the right of individuals to seek, receive, and impart information through any means of communication and digital technologies, through measures such as the removal, blocking, or filtering of content, unless such interference is justifiable and compatible with international human rights and standards. Furthermore, Principle 38.2 states that states shall not engage in or condone any disruption of access to the internet or other digital technologies for segments of the public or an entire population. However, despite these clear principles, internet shutdowns have proliferated across Africa in recent years. This begs the question, what can be done to ensure that states do not restrict access to the internet, thereby violating Article 9 of the African Charter? In addition to raising awareness via discussions such as this webinar, I believe that greater attention should be paid to holding states accountable for internet shutdowns. This, however, becomes rather challenging within any conflict, such as the situation in Sudan, in addition to other countries experiencing conflict, which will be, I'm sure, discussed during today's webinar. The Commission has played a part in the campaign against internet shutdowns for condemning the practice publicly. Via press statements issuing letters of urgent appeal, calling on the heads of state directly to address the situation and provide clarification to the Commission on cases of internet shutdowns. In addition to engaging with states during promotion missions and during the review of periodic reports by raising questions on measures put in place by governments to ensure that it refrains from shutting down the internet. However, I am confident that we can do more. I would like to take this opportunity to call on all participants to propose recommendations focused on how to address internet shutdowns in Africa, particularly within the context of states which are experiencing conflict. Additionally, I would like to once again thank the organizers for convening this platform and involving me in your deliberations. I would also like to stress the commitment of my mandate to work with you all to address this prevailing issue and to ensure that internet shutdowns become a rarity in Africa. So thank you, and I will continue to follow online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for those brief remarks that not only just, gives us a bit of information about the mandate of the Special Rapporteur, but also takes us through, the normative standards of the African Commission as far as freedom of expression and digital rights is concerned. And really, thank you so much for also highlighting that you are open to collaborating with, partners that are also joining us online. So thank you so much. And colleagues that are joining us right now, just, good morning. And also just indicate, where you are coming from, the organization that you work for, the entity that you are representing. It's a pleasure to have you. Now we'll move on to the overview, what is the general overview of internet shutdowns on the continent? And Access Now has been working in that area quite extensively. And we have today Felicia Antonio, who has over a decade been at the forefront of championing media and internet freedom in Africa and just generally around the world. And, her work challenges despotic regimes and also gives voices to activists in countries where media and internet freedom remains a tool that is in the hands of, government officials, as we have seen in most cases. And currently, she's the Keep It On campaign manager at Access Now, which is a global campaign of over 345 organizations that fight against internet shutdowns. And she has authored, independently and co-authored several publications on internet shutdowns, which you can find on the Access Now website, Yale University website, CPESA, Bloomsbury Collections as well. She was also hosted the Kill Switch podcast and was featured on the Shutdown documentary by the BBC. I mean, really, she's the right person to talk about this particular issue. I yield the floor to you, Felicia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lingwe, for the introduction, and thank you, Commissioner Topsino, for making my work very easy. You already highlighted some of the findings that we documented, and so I would try to speak more to other cases that we documented in 2024. Before I do that, just to highlight what the Keep It On campaign is about and the coalition. So those of you who may not be familiar with the campaign, this is a global campaign that was launched in 2016 by Access Now, and it unites and organizes efforts to end internet shutdowns worldwide. And so currently, as Lingwe said, we have over 345 organizations around the world. We mobilize, we do advocacy, and we raise awareness about internet shutdowns and engage with diverse stakeholders to bring an end to this growing threat to human rights and democracy. The Keep It On coalition and campaign is also the world leading coalition against internet shutdowns. So for us, we focus on documenting and advocating against deliberate actions by mostly governments to restrict people's access to the internet or electronic communications, or any actions that render these essential platforms inaccessible or effectively unusable. And also, we also document all types of shutdowns that target either countrywide, nationwide, community-wide, so long as it's affecting people in specific locations or targeting specific populations, we draw attention to these acts of repression. And our monitoring has shown that these internet shutdowns are normally imposed to exert control over the flow of information. And sometimes you can hear internet shutdowns also being referred to as blackouts or kill switches or network disruption. So an internet shutdown could range from a complete disruption of the internet connectivity or slowing down of the internet speed, which we call throttling, or blocking access to two-way essential communication platforms such as Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, or any other digital platforms that allow people to communicate and share information. So in 2024, we documented over 290, at least 296 internet shutdowns, and our reports, which Commissioner briefly mentioned, exposes how authorities are using internet shutdowns to cause chaos across borders, to also exacerbate trauma during conflict, and to disrupt the lives of millions of people around the globe. So globally, this is what you would see. So from last year, you can see that the spike in number of shutdowns from 283 to 296, which is very, very concerning. And then when you look at the number of countries that experienced internet shutdowns, you would also see that that is going up, which shows that internet shutdowns are spreading across the globe and affecting more and more people around the world. And for us, one shutdown is just way too many shutdowns for any targeted community. And that is why we work to draw attention to shutdowns happening across the world. So these are some of the countries that were highlighted in our report. Some of them you see as services, which shows that some of the shutdowns were perpetrated by actors outside the borders of these countries. And then for Myanmar, for example, the shutdowns were perpetrated by diverse actors, so the current regime, as well as other military actors in the country. And so I would just move us to the triggers of shutdowns, which were also briefly mentioned, but unfortunately conflicts related shutdowns were the highest trigger for us. So a trigger simply means an incident that is likely to get a government or an actor disrupt internet access. And so during conflicts, we see warring parties or governments imposing internet shutdowns, or the aggressors also using internet shutdowns in the forms of cutting fiber optic cables, destroying power and telecommunications infrastructure, using jamming devices, and also taking control over the internet service provider offices, which was a case we saw in Sudan. And then also deploying of cyber attacks to sabotage providers. And just we saw anonymous Sudan targeting countries like Bahrain, Israel, and Chad with cyber attacks in order to disrupt access to internet connectivity in those countries. Another trigger that we've consistently documented is the use of shutdowns to quell protests. And so you can see that 2024, we saw a very high number of shutdowns documented around protests. And this is normally to quell the protests stifle dissents, disrupt independence movements, and also suppress fundamental human rights. In times of exams, we've also seen governments trying to justify the use of internet shutdowns, claiming that it's to prevent cheating during exams, but this has not prevented cheating. And we think there are more concrete ways that governments can address concerns they have around the conduct of examinations across board. We also documented election-related shutdowns, and this is a very common trend we've seen being used in Africa, where authorities tend to shut down the internet prior to elections, during elections, or even after elections when the results have been announced. And an example being in Mozambique, we saw the protests that happened there, and also in relation to the elections, how people went on the streets to protest the results of the election that were announced by the electoral body. And then you would see Comoros as well, where the internet was disrupted around elections. For Uganda, this is a shutdown that was imposed in 2021 during the elections, and it's targeting Facebook. So Facebook is still blocked in Uganda as we speak since 2021, and it was blocked prior to the elections that happened in the country. And then, of course, in other places like India, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, Venezuela, and Mauritania, we have seen election-related shutdowns being imposed in those countries. These are examples of the cross-border shutdowns that I mentioned. So you would see Russia imposing shutdowns in Ukraine. Of course, throughout the invasion, we've seen this being used as a target. We've also seen Israel imposing shutdowns and destroying communication infrastructure in Palestine. And I'll just jump to Kenya, where authorities attempted to disrupt internet access in June last year during the protest against the finance bill. And in doing so, this shutdown spilled over to other countries like Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda, impacting people. So people were not able to access the internet for some number of hours due to the disruption that happened from Kenya. And it's important to note that this was not the authorities in those countries imposing the shutdown, but they were affected by the actions of the Kenyan authorities. And so this, I've highlighted some of the countries that we saw shutdowns documented in, from Burundi, which I've just explained. Chad was targeted by Anonymous Sudan. Then Comoros, Equatorial Guinea. It's important to note that the shutdown in Equatorial Guinea, which targeted the Anobon region, is still ongoing. And it's really, really concerning. For the triggers, you can see 13 incidents to quell protests, 4 incidents to control information flow, 3 election-related shutdowns, which I've mentioned, 5 conflict-related, and 2 shutdowns in relation to exams. In Africa, we saw 3 new offenders, that is Comoros, Guinea-Bissau, and Mauritius. And for Mauritius, it's also where we saw authorities rescind their decision to disrupt internet access for a particular period. And so when authorities announced on October 31 that they were blocking access to all social media platforms until November 11, we protested and put out public statements denouncing the actions of the government. And this decision was reversed after 24 hours. And so access to social media platforms were blocked, and people were able to use these essential platforms prior to the elections that happened in Mauritius. In Africa, we are also seeing entrenched perpetrators, that is Sudan, Ethiopia, in the sense that these two countries continue to resort to the use of internet shutdowns in response to critical national crisis or during critical national moments, as we've seen in Sudan, where the warring parties resorted to the use of shutdowns during the civil war that started in 2023. And also, it's important to note that all these shutdowns usually coincide with grave human rights abuses, irrespective of the trigger. So it could be around conflict, around protests. You can see brutalities against protesters, against dissidents, and against people that are denouncing or challenging authorities for the injustices being perpetrated against people. Ethiopia, in as much as authorities have said or indicated internet connectivity has been restored, it's important to note that people are still not able to access the internet as compared to the pre-conflict levels. So in the Tigray region, where the internet was shut down in November 2020 for over 2 years, and in the Amhara region, where the internet was again disrupted in 2023 in August, people are still struggling to be able to access internet at the speed that they were able to prior to the conflict. And in Equatorial Guinea, I mentioned authorities targeting cutting access to the internet and phone lines in the island province of Anobong, and that shutdown is still ongoing. And it was also targeting protests that the residents as well as environmental activists led against the governments in the country. And we've also seen reports of widespread arrest and persecution of human rights defenders in the country. And then we have emerging offenders, and I would use Kenya as an example, where 2-3 years ago, Kenya used to be one of the examples in the region because we had documented commitments by the government to keep the internet on throughout elections, throughout key national events. But unfortunately, over the 2 recent years, we've seen the authorities in Kenya disrupt internet access. And so it's really, really concerning to see that. And you'd also know that Kenya is a member of the Freedom Online Coalition, which is a network of governments that work to advance internet freedom across the globe. And then quickly, I'll just highlight some successes we saw. The African Commission on Human and People's Rights adopted a landmark resolution urging member states to refrain from imposing shutdowns during elections in March 2024. And if you all remember, 2024 was a year of elections, and so this was really timely for our advocacy against shutdowns. And then I've already mentioned the example in Mauritius, and I would just quickly, I don't know how many minutes I have left. Lingy, can you help me with that?
You should be rounding up, yes. You should
Okay.
be.
All right, cool. All right, so we have a number of initiatives we use to push back against internet shutdowns. And so I'll just talk quickly through the election watch, which enable us to prepare in advance and to engage with authorities to ensure that the internet is accessible throughout electoral periods. And we've worked with some of you on this call and other actors to engage or on this process. And so what we do is that we identify elections at the risk of internet shutdowns, and then we start engaging with the stakeholders in that particular country through open letters, capacity building training, and dialogues to prevent a shutdown from happening. In the event that we are not able to prevent the shutdown, we also have initiatives where we provide people with the necessary tools and resources to come back online or to keep safe during the internet disruption. And as I indicated, we've seen commitment from governments, including the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sierra Leone, Bangladesh, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria prior to elections, or to keep the internet on throughout elections. And I've included some resources here. You can learn more about the campaign and what countries we are monitoring in 2025. And feel free to reach out if you'd like us to work together on a campaign in your country. And then we also have a shutdown impact stories project where we document the human rights or the human impact of internet shutdowns and use these stories to advocate and raise awareness about what living through an internet shutdown actually means. And then we have the shutdown tracker optimization project, which is a database of all the shutdowns we've documented from 2016. And so you can use this for your research and your advocacy against internet shutdowns. And then, of course, we've also resorted to litigations in pushing back against shutdown and actually documented successes in countries like Nigeria, Sudan, and Zambia. And yeah, I have some recommendations. I think I mentioned through some of them, but what I want you to leave with this session is that no single stakeholder can end internet shutdowns alone. And so across all contexts, including during protests, elections, conflicts, and exam period, we urge states, private sector actors, journalists, international organizations, and civil society to continue to work together to push back against internet shutdowns. I have some resources included, and because of time, I'll not be able to go through all that, but I'm happy to share my slides with those who will be interested. Thank you, and I'm also available to take questions.
Thank you so much, Felicia, for just giving us that very comprehensive overview of, not just on the continent, but globally. That was quite insightful. I think from where all of us are seated, we now have an idea of, what is going on as far as internet shutdowns are concerned. And I like the fact that you have, as Access Now, put together a lot of useful resources that can be used for advocacy and research purposes. Some of them I've already shared them in our chat section, and you're also free to just browse through their website to get more information on that. And they're also very free access now to collaborate on, some of these campaigns that are going on. It's always easier, when we are working together, in collaborative efforts, the voices are stronger, the efforts are more impactful, they are more meaningful. So let's take up the opportunity. Once again, introduce yourself and the organization where you are coming from. If you have any questions for Felicia, please put them in the chat, or we could give you the opportunity later on to speak. Now we are moving on to the specific country context, and right now we will call upon Tanzania to give us the Mozambican context. Just before I give you the opportunity to speak, allow me just to introduce Tanzania. He's from Mozambique, obviously, and he's has a PhD in political science, and has been actively engaged in research and advocacy on youth participation on the internet, social media, political participation in Mozambique, including online activism, both working with international organizations and also with national organizations. Some of the organizations that he has worked with include, Paradigm Initiative, CIPESA, Freedom House, UNESCO, Internews, our Center for Human Rights, and he was also a board member of a number of organizations. And also has a recent book on digital citizenship, which was published in 2023. So Tanzania, as you take the floor, please just address us on, the Mozambican situation, particularly, the context of elections and how the shutdowns during that period, affected democratic processes, and also the ability, of the public to access information, and whether it also contributed to undermining electoral transparency. And also we know that in the context of, the northern part of Mozambique as well, the political climate has not, we have that conflict in the northern part of Mozambique, and whether this has also affected or exacerbated, or issues in that region. And also, how has this undermined the effectiveness of civil society organizations and humanitarian efforts? Just take us through, in about 7 minutes, some of these issues, just to get an understanding of what's happening in Mozambique. Thank you.
And thank you, Kinliwe, and thank you, colleagues. I hope that you can listen very well. If not, please let me know. I was trying to listen to Felicia and the special rapporteur, and sometimes my internet probably is not good. We're talking about internet today, and we still face some challenges in Mozambique. And I'm based in Maputo, in the capital of the country. So imagine if in the capital, we still have challenges. So across the country, maybe it's more difficult. And probably I will then turn off my video just for introduction, and I will proceed. And thank you for the invitation again to join this panel for discussion. And I was following Felicia, and I'm telling myself that's not good to see Mozambique in your report. It's the first time probably that we are seeing Mozambique in such reports. So I was saying I was used to read other countries and never Mozambique. And for the first time now I'm seeing my country. So it's not good to see that, but thank you, Felicia, for taking us and providing some threads across the country, the region, but also across the globe. So Mozambique, we had elections last year in October to elect the new president and also to elect the new parliament. And it was in the last week of October. The process, let's be honest about that, went well during the election day. But after the announcement of results, 2 days after the formal process, we start seeing some kind of protest, people going to the streets, and also just to say, we didn't vote to you, let's say, for the political party, ruling party today is still Frelimo. But it was in the streets, people protesting and saying that we don't recognize the results. That time was in Maputo and also in Beira, the center of Mozambique, and as we said, Kinliwe in the north and Cabo Delgado. It was quite, and only people protesting and say that we don't trust the process and we need probably a new opportunity to vote again because the results were not what we were expecting to do. But for after a week of protests, and it was implemented by the opposition candidate, Venancio Mondlane. Probably you can live because you are a neighbor of Mozambique. You have been hearing a lot about what's happening in Mozambique now. But the opposition candidate, Venancio Mondlane, he just called a mass protest across the country, and people starting sharing message on Facebook, and Facebook is the most used platform in Mozambique. But let me first give you a trend of how many people connect to the internet. We only have 20% of people that are connected to the internet every day in Mozambique, and most of them are using mobile phones. More than 70% of Mozambicans, they use mobile phones to connect to the internet. And only 12% of people can connect using mobile phones, and at the same time also, let's say, computers or other tools of connection. Imagine in such situation where we have low, let's say, percentage of people connected to the internet, and then we have a government blocking or maybe trying to not to allow people to get connected. And it happened after a week of protests in Maputo. And for the first time, the government, they came to the public and they said, yes, we blocked the internet. Probably this is the difference between Mozambique and other countries where you would see the government saying that, no, we didn't do anything. It's because of infrastructure, or maybe it's because of other issues. But for the first time, the government came to the public and said, yes, we blocked because of people sharing what they call to protect the national security. They said that. And the second reason, according to the government, was because people were sharing kind of message that called undermine the credibility of the process. But they forget that the results were announced 2 days ago. So how can you say that probably the internet can undermine the results, but the results were announced by the official entities in Mozambique? So this kind of explanation of reasons, as you can see, sometimes doesn't make sense. And they did it a week after, but they didn't stop. They just blocked the internet first. But then 2 days after, they blocked even the access to Facebook, X, and WhatsApp. And in Mozambique, maybe it's different from what you can see in Kenya, in South Africa. People they know very well how to manage different tools. They know very well how to manage VPN. But in my country, let me be honest about that. Probably I'm saying we as the whole population, probably we don't have much capability to understand how to manage VPN in some regions. But for the first time, we saw civil society organizations starting to tell people on how to use VPN. So this became a large campaign led by civil society organizations based in Maputo, in the capital, and also in Beira, in Sofala, teaching people on how first to download and then how to install VPN and continue using internet. But the government, when they realized, for example, that people are using VPN to connect to the internet, what they did, they went to the Vodafone. Vodafone is the same that we have also in South Africa. And they said, please, because Vodafone is private. And we have Movitel. Movitel is also private. And we have a public telecom that is called TMCell. So using TMCell, it was not possible to connect Facebook, WhatsApp, and other platforms, even using VPN. But then they did the same. They asked Vodafone and Movitel to do the same. So we saw a government that could also ask private companies that they had nothing to do with public, asking them to block the access to VPN. So what we saw coming more normal in Mozambique, probably abroad, citizens that were organized, just do campaigns and also to approach international organizations. And I remember reading a note from you, Felicia, and also Paradigm Initiative and CIPESA, calling for the government of Mozambique to open the internet for everyone. So this kind of approach coming from national organizations trying to approach to international organization became more normal, and it was not something that we could expect to see, for example, in the last 5 years. This is the first part of my intervention. And Kenley, were you asking me about the North, how it can also impact the conflict in Cabo Delgado? You know very well, probably some of you, that Mozambique were facing terrorist attacks in Cabo Delgado. And in that region of the country, in the North, people didn't vote in some areas because of the conflict. And adding this kind of issues of not having access to the internet also pose more problems to people, even to understand and to participate during the electoral process in Mozambique. But before elections in Cabo Delgado, let me tell you that even to access to normal information about the conflict via, let's say, television, a newspaper, and the radio is difficult to understand what's happening in Cabo Delgado. And adding that also the problems of internet connection in that region became more difficult to have access to what's happening in Cabo Delgado, even to understand about IDPs, internal displaced people in Cabo Delgado became also difficult to understand what's going on in that province. So we saw much more difficult to understand the conflict in the region. But I have to also be honest saying that as part of academia and also as a researcher and part of civil society, I saw some kind of raising up from Mozambicans to say it must end and we want change and think this, and we need the government to be more open to engage with us. We saw organizations like Platform Decide, that was one of the most vocal during that time to say it must stop because we need internet. And we also see, as a good example, CDD, Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Mozambique. They became more vocal and to say, please open the internet because this is a violation of our rights as citizens. But also we saw international awareness, for example, for countries like Portugal, Northern Africa, but also in Nigeria, as I said, Paradigm Initiative. You in South Africa, I saw that you were very engaged, even Center for Human Rights, supporting local organizations to do something and also to change the reality in Mozambique. My last part will be, how about today? Mozambique, we are still facing challenges in our democracy. Even last week, we saw people demonstrating in the streets, but the internet shutdown, it ends in January 2025. The second week of January, the government, they open the communications, and now we don't have a blockage of internet, but we never know because we're still facing some kind of localized protests across the country, not in all the country, but we've been seeing some localized protests, for example, in Maputo and the center and in the north. But the communication now it's open. We don't have cases of internet shutdown now in Mozambique. What we have that is new, and I have to tell you, is that we have a new minister, and the name of the minister is the Minister of Communication and Digital Transformation. This is the first time that the governor of Mozambique, the new executive, the new cabinet, they created that minister. I don't know if they really want to transform digital or maybe they really want to continue blocking the internet. Let's see in the next few weeks or few months. Thank you. Over.
Kilingewe, please unmute yourself.
I am talking to myself. Okay, sorry about that, but thank you very much, Tanzania, for taking us through, the context as it, unfolded in Mozambique. It's particularly during the time of elections where you need connectivity during that time for accessing information to effectively exercise your right to vote, to participate in the public space and all that. And we saw that internet shutdown during that critical time in Mozambique. And some of these issues are a bit abstract. You see it happening in other countries until it's your country. Then, when it hits home, you can see, the reality. And exactly this is what happened in the context of, Tanzania, who has been working in this area, looking at other countries until it actually happened in Mozambique. So if you have any questions around, issues in Mozambique, you can also just raise your hand when we are done with the presentations, or you can, put them in the chat. Now let's move on to Ethiopia. Ethiopia has also been notorious for, shutting down the internet for, very prolonged times. For the longest time, we were talking about the Tigray region, and all that. So, but just to give us a more detailed insight, we have Henok. Henok is a project officer at the Center for Human Rights here at the University of Pretoria, is my colleague, and is also a doctoral candidate. He's doing his PhD. He's also a tutor in our master's program on human rights and democratization in Africa. So Henok, I'll just give you a few minutes, like 7 minutes, just to take us through the context in Ethiopia, and just take us through what has been the trend. The internet shutdowns have been implemented in the different contexts, conflicts that have taken place in in Ethiopia, such as the year-long northern, Ethiopian war, civil war, and also which affected the Tigray region, the Amhara region, the Afar regions, and also the ongoing conflict in the Amhara region right now. So probably if you can give us an overall picture of these internet shutdowns and the trends that have been observed, and also as you reflect on that, also take us through how these shutdowns during the conflicts further exacerbated the human rights violations. And also, is there anything, in your opinion, that can be done by the international community, to exert pressure on Ethiopia to adhere to human rights obligations and prevent further internet shutdowns? And like, we just want to get a sense of your thoughts around those issues. Henok, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kelingawe. Are you hearing me?
Yes, please.
Okay, so before I get into internet shutdown in the context of conflict, I would like to start by saying a few words about the broader picture. I think it is important to emphasize that Ethiopia is one of the countries in the region known for frequent internet shutdown. While this occurring even before Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed leadership came to power, their frequency and scale has increased since 2018, which is the year the Abiy Ahmed administration came to power. These shutdowns have occurred in different contexts, such as during national exams, allegedly to prevent exam cheating, protests, particularly anti-government protests, and most importantly, amidst of conflict. By conflict, I don't just mean conflict in the strict international humanitarian law sense, but also ethnic-based massacres, inter-ethnic violence, and other form of unrest. So internet shutdown in Ethiopia are not only frequent, but also occur in various contexts, including, but not limited to, armed conflict. Moving specifically to internet shutdown in the conflict situation since 2018, which is the year Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed administration came to power, Ethiopia has faced multiple conflicts in different regions like Tigray, Amhara, Afar, Oromia, Benshangul, and so on and so forth. These conflicts have two key characteristics that I believe critical or crucial to understand the possible motive behind the shutdown. First, this conflict have been marked by serious human rights and humanitarian law violation, with state actor reportedly responsible for majority of the violation, though non-state actors have also been linked to serious and grave violations. These violations include like mass killing, ethnic-based attacks, such as the ongoing ethnic-based attack against Amharas in Oromia region, and also include war crimes and crime against humanity being committed or that have been committed in the context of armed conflict. We have seen these patterns of serious and grave human rights violation in different armed conflicts, including as you said, that year-long armed conflict in northern part of Ethiopia, which affected the Tigray, Afar, and Amhara region, and the conflict in Oromia region between the Oromo Liberation Army and the government force, and the ongoing conflict in Amhara region between Amhara Fannos and government forces. So while all these conflicts differ in scale and intensity, as I said, human rights violations are common in all of them. The second feature that makes this conflict common is all of these conflicts across different regions have been accompanied by internet shutdown. Of course, the scale and duration vary, but one thing is clear or common. Whenever conflict or violence erupt or the government launch military response, shutdowns are almost or pretty much guaranteed. So this brings us to an important question. Are these shutdowns really about restoring law and order, as the government often claims, or are they being used to create an environment or an atmosphere where human rights violation can happen without accountability or without any scrutiny? These are questions I think we need to take seriously, because in many cases it seems that shutdowns are being used as one of the tools to allow military or what the government often call law enforcement operation to happen without any kinds of accountability or scrutiny. In addition, there is also reason to believe that they might have been used as a form of collective punishment, a way to get entire communities that the government perceive or accuse of supporting insurgent groups. This is not just like mere speculation. Rights groups have already documented cases where the Ethiopian government has cut off basic service like electricity and delivery of humanitarian services as a kind of form of collective punishment. And internet shutdown, I believe, may very well be part of this broader pattern. We saw this in Tigray, Amhara, and Afar during the 2-year-long conflict. And we saw it now in the ongoing conflict in the Amhara and Oromia region, where in many places of the regions, millions of people are left in the dark due to communication blackout, including shutdown. So what we can reasonably infer from this reality is a pattern suggesting that most internet shutdown in Ethiopia, particularly those implemented during conflicts, are not just about restoring law and order or caused by damage to internet infrastructure, as the government often claims. Instead, it seems that in some cases they are being used to enable human rights violation as well. When it comes to the second question, which is as regards to impact, as I mentioned earlier, internet shutdowns seems to be a key tool for the government to create a controlled environment, a controlled situation for military or law enforcement operations without regard to its human rights or other international obligation, while evading accountability by blocking any form of scrutiny or observation from international actors. So when we talk about the impact, the starting point should be this pattern, the tendency to use internet shutdown to create an environment that enable human rights violation. So having said that, I would like also to say something about some of the specific manifestation of these shutdowns during armed conflict and their impact on human rights in different conflict in Ethiopia, particularly focusing on the ongoing armed conflict in Amhara region. To begin with, the communication blackout in general and the internet shutdown in particular are taking away life-saving information from civilians. As we all know, people in conflict-affected region need real-time information to understand what is going on, like where the danger is, and make informed decision, like whether to stay or flee. But when there is blackout, like in many areas of the Amhara region and also in western part of Oromia region now, they can't access that vital information, which puts them at risk of their rights violation. The other related impact is its disruption of communication between civilians and emergency service. And in addition, the communication blackout have also caused families to become separated. Many families are already displaced due to the conflict, and with the communication blackout, including the shutdown, they have no way to check on their loved ones. They don't know if their family members are safe or even alive. In this regard, to give you a personal example, during the first 6 months of the ongoing war in the Amhara region, I was unable to reach my family, where I used to contact regularly through WhatsApp or Messenger call. Now, the only way I can reach them is through direct calls, which beyond the financial implications, since I am also a student, are often unstable. Besides that, the shutdowns have further, I think, deepened the education crisis in different places. According to a very recent report released by UNICEF, right now millions of students in Ethiopia are out of school due to conflict and other crises. For example, 4.4 million in Amhara region, 3.2 million in Oromia, and 1.2 million in Tigray. So for these people, or for these students who are also displaced from their home, I mean, there is no other way of even getting information or in order to keep themselves updated about their class. When it comes to recommendation, I have a lot to say, but I will focus on our African institutions, especially the African Union and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. First, I want to emphasize that the AU silence in the face of worsening human rights situation in Ethiopia is deeply alarming and concerning, given that the AU is headquartered in Addis Ababa. It is unlikely that the situation is unknown to it, which makes its silence quite worrying or quite concerning. Therefore, I would suggest that the AU take a more proactive role in encouraging the Ethiopian government to uphold its human rights obligation. This could mean urging the government to rethink its militaristic approach, which has failed many times, as we have seen in conflict across various regions, and instead give peaceful solution a chance to address the ongoing challenge affecting the country. Maybe a key step in this process could be the reconvening of a genuine and inclusive national dialogue, which should address the root cause of the country's issues, including the ongoing human rights violation and the internet shutdown, as they are deeply interconnected with the broader political climate in the country. It is also worth noting that the African Commission has remained largely silent on Ethiopia, particularly regarding the ongoing conflict in the Amhara and Oromia region. For example, despite the war in the Amhara region continuing for over 2 years, the Commission has yet to issue a statement, while millions of people in the conflict affected areas endure internet shutdowns and severe human rights violation, including war crime and other kinds of atrocities, as documented by various organizations, including various UN agencies. Therefore, since it is better late than never, I would like to take this opportunity to call also on the Commission to take action. At the very least, a statement or public intervention would be or would help draw attention to the urgent human rights issue in the country, which definitely include the internet shutdown, which we cannot separate it from the entire political context in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henok. And ending on a very powerful note, calling on our continental body to step up as far as Ethiopian conflict is concerned. And it's a good thing that you are raising this very strong call and recommendation on a platform where we even have the special rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information in Africa. And I guess this is a direct message to you, Commissioner Topsisono, you know, and the commission at large as far as the situation is concerned. What is particularly touching about the submission that Henok just made is the personal experience of having been in Ethiopia, but not at home, and not being able to communicate with his family at home because there is an internet shutdown. This is the story of many Ethiopians, and it's probably far much worse than what Henok has been able to articulate. There's a dire situation. That's why Henok is calling for a national dialogue to tackle the root causes of what is happening in Ethiopia, which now is manifesting in the internet, in the context of internet shutdowns, but there are root causes, deeper causes to the conflict. Thank you so much, Henok, for that intervention and making that very powerful and strong call as far as the situation in Ethiopia is concerned. Now we'll move on to Sudan. We all know the situation in Sudan, the ongoing civil war, and also the internet shutdowns as well that have also affected the ability, just like in Ethiopia, the ability of citizens to communicate, to seek safety and access essential services. And also looking at the issue of concealment of atrocities and what's, just what could be done, to restore access to information, and how access to information has been affected, and also how that is undermining accountability. And to take us through that, we have Razan. Razan is a licensed lawyer in Sudan, and she holds an LLM. She holds a dual LLM degrees, and one in international European business law from Trinity College in Dublin, and also another one in human rights and democratization in Africa from Center for Human Rights. She's also a doctoral candidate as well, pursuing a PhD studies. And she has extensive knowledge on human rights advocacy in the context of Sudan, and particularly focusing on the rule of law in conflict and crisis areas. And her work specifically emphasizes the rights of vulnerable groups, including women, children, refugees, and internally displaced persons. Razan, the floor is yours. Please take us through the situation in Sudan, and also just reflect on how internet shutdowns hinder the ability of international humanitarian organizations in terms of coordinating aid and monitoring the situation on the ground, and also the role that the global community can also play in ensuring the restoration of internet access for humanitarian purposes. Over to you, Razan.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Center for providing me the opportunity to shed light on the internet shutdowns in Sudan. And special thanks goes to Madame Special Rapporteur and Felicia for already laying the ground. I aim to build upon their perspectives and maybe reflect a first-hand experience as a war survivor myself. Unlike Mozambique, I'm not surprised to see Sudan on Access Now's report. I would actually be surprised if Sudan was not there, because the current internet shutdown is not the first one. We experienced internet shutdowns for different reasons throughout the year. 2019, we had the Khartoum massacre, where internet was shut down for a long time to hide the atrocities that committed by the army. 100 people were dead, more than 70 cases of rape. Then 2021, we had the coup. Ironically, the coup was conducted by the now current warring parties. Also during the coup days, we had internet shutdowns. And again, we had internet shutdowns for exams. Well, allegedly they say for exams, then later on, we discovered that at the same time of the alleged internet shutdown for exams, there was civil unrest somewhere else. So just like Henok said, I think a common trait between these internet shutdowns, it's always they're concealing human rights atrocities. I'm going to quote a joint statement by 94 humanitarian organizations and civil society and human rights organizations, that they were all members of the Keep It On Coalition. They said parties to the conflict must end collective punishment and enable access to life-saving telecommunications. And I would like to emphasize the collective punishment, as in sense that it was SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, that started the first internet shutdown from the areas that were under the control of RSF. Then RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, in retaliation, they cut the internet in places that are under the control of SAF. So it became like a game of each warring parties destruct the infrastructure of internet in places where the opposing warring parties is under control. So this is how it started. As of February last year, February 2024, we have 30 million from the Sudanese population are out of telecommunications at all, whether it's the landline, whether it's the internet. And I would like to emphasize that even before the war, that the internet penetration was very low in Sudan, only 13%. So this current situation exacerbated an already fragile situation in Sudan. Henok talked about the communication isolation that was created by the internet shutdown. As I'm going to reflect a personal experience that I had. It took us 12 days to get out of Sudan when the war was erupted, only because the routes that we take were already destructed by one of the warring parties, and we had no way to know that. I have an uncle who we heard that he was sick 2 months after he was already bedridden. We heard that he died a month after he already passed away. We see online Sudanese at the diaspora outside Canada, US, whatever, asking of missing family members that they later on, maybe a month later, discover that these people died in their houses. They had no way of contacting them. Also, even before the war, Sudanese depended on internet banking. It's called Bankak. So after the internet shutdown occurred, there was no way to use the banking system anymore. And I would like to point out that it was also impossible to use cash, because cash would put you at risk, because it's either you're going to get looted or you're going to get attacked or robbed. So people relied on that banking system more than anything, especially at the times of war. So with that option being defeated, there was no way. People are literally starving at homes. The lack of connectivity means that mass civilians lack critical updates about safe routes. Like I said, starting from February 2024, nationwide shutdowns left almost 30 million Sudanese without internet access. When it comes to the humanitarian aid, of course, coordination difficulties appeal. Aid groups struggle to coordinate relief efforts, reach vulnerable communities, receive or distribute funding, and plan and execute intervention. I would like to point out that 8 humanitarian organizations work hand to hand with volunteers, local volunteers, to reach areas where they cannot reach. So this coordination is used through WhatsApp or like Facebook, whatever mean is possible. But ever since the war started, which by saying the war started means the internet shut down, because the first internet disruption happened in the first week of war. Emergency rooms were unable to deliver food, were unable to receive even money, because they rely on donation from outside Sudan. They were unable to do so. Months later, Sudanese relied on an alternative mean, which is the satellite connectivity, the Starlink company held by Elon Musk. At the beginning, it appeared as a beacon of hope that people could rely on it. But later on, we discovered the danger risk that it puts civilians. First of all, these mediums are brought to Sudan by RSF. So they use it to facilitate their attacks, to coordinate their tactics, guide their drones, coordinate military operation, and etc., etc. So civilians, whether they're renting the RSF-owned terminals or using like smuggled equipments, face like higher risk in the sense of that, first of all, RSF charged huge amounts for civilians to use it. Using these satellite systems made civilians very easily trackable. Most of these modules were put in like internet cafes. These internet cafes became a hub where RSF could kidnap girls from these locations. And we all know about the numbers of SGPV or DPV happening in Sudan. So it became a use to expand their operation of kidnapping girls and enslaving women. Okay, my last part is recommendation. I think one of the most important thing is that, hello, I'm not sure if I still have connection. Yeah, I'm back.
You
I
you
can
are
hear you.
still there.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the most important recommendation that should be stated is that both warring parties should start considering the internet infrastructure as civilian infrastructure, as in the sense to prevent attacking these infrastructures. Just like Mozambique, in Sudan, we have at the early stages of the war, both warring parties would go to private internet providers, and force them to shut down the internet in the threat of, if you don't do this, we're going to destroy the infrastructure. Ultimately, they did destroy the infrastructure of the internet. But however, internet infrastructure should be treated as civilian infrastructure, and both warring parties should be prevented from engaging in such acts. I think as to the global community, the United Nations Emergency Telecommunication Cluster should urgently increase emergency telecommunication capacity, especially in Darfur and Kordofan. And I would like to point out that these internet, like I said, the penetration rate of internet in Sudan has already been low even before the war, with only 13% across the country were using internet. But this internet blackout increased the vulnerability in already vulnerable communities, especially IDPs and refugees. So in Darfur, especially in the IDPs camps, these people, even before the internet, they didn't have access. They could have like only maybe the chief of the specific community have internet. But now we know nothing. We know nothing about what's going on in these camps. So we're not just talking about cities. We're also talking about remote, isolated areas that even before the war, that they were completely isolated, completely away from the surface of media. As to the development donors and financial institutions, I think a support should be given to the communication sector development, especially trying to rebuild what has been destructed. I think international bodies should advocate for humanitarian connectivity, as now the situation of lack of internet in Sudan does not mean it's not just internet shutdown, as in the sense of we're just out of internet, we don't have internet. It means death. It's a life or death situation. So I think all the civil society organization, humanitarian actors, there should be more advocacy targeting the humanitarian connectivity and emphasizing the importance of having internet and like the crucial role that the internet plays in delivering aid. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Razan, for taking us through, the context in Sudan, like particularly how, communications are affected, and also the different groups and vulnerability, which is already in a vulnerable situation, how it becomes exacerbated in that regard. And you also raise internet governance issues as a as a way of articulating your recommendations. And you are saying that the internet infrastructure should be treated as a civilian infrastructure, which is not always the case, or which is mostly not the case in many circumstances. And I hope we can get insights from those that have experience in internet governance on what we feel about the recommendation that has been raised by Razan. What should we do as far as internet infrastructure is concerned? Should it be civilian infrastructure? Should it be controlled by the state? So without wasting time, let's get on to the situation in DRC. The situation in DRC, we have the executive director of Rudy International, Asen Tungali, and he is based in the DRC. And Rudy is an organization that works at the intersection of technology and human rights. And his role, in that role as the executive director, he has successfully led projects involving capacity building, research, and topics such as barriers to technological development and advocacy for public policies that promote connectivity in DRC and across the continent. So in terms of DRC, Asen, maybe also take us through, this internet shutdowns that have been reported and in the ongoing conflict, and also previously, and also how these shutdowns also affect access to information, just like we've had in the context of Ethiopia, in the context of Sudan and Mozambique, and whether just take us through how also the challenges of internet shutdowns affect documentation of human rights violations, particularly by journalists and also civil society organizations as well, and what can be done as a way of recommendation from your end. I yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Lengiwe and Felicia and everyone else who have managed to put this together. It's always good to be speaking, but I'm not enjoying speaking about internet shutdowns because, it's not a positive thing. And after hearing all the stories of what was happening in Ethiopia, in Sudan, and even in Mozambique, so it has been like over 6 years that the DRC hasn't experienced any internet shutdowns because the latest one we were talking about was in 2019. This was right after the elections. And so Felicia and I were kind of crossing fingers saying, yes, 6 years, no internet shutdowns in the DRC, or not any single interruption in the DRC until early this year in January, that's my country, the DRC, was again put back on Felicia's lists of countries that have disrupted the internet. Sadly, this is happening in the country that is invaded by a rebel group called the M23, especially in the eastern part of the country. And this is very sad because in January, they invaded the cities of Goma and Bukavu, and they are still actually progressing. When a rebel group that is backed by a foreign country, including Rwanda, is invading the city of Goma, which is the biggest city of that region, that means there is war and conflict happening in the region. People being killed, people being displaced, and so many people who were just quietly or peacefully living in their own houses and in the region are now forced to flee, are now forced to leave, are now forced to see their loved ones being killed. And in addition to that, internet also being disrupted. So it's like a series of terrible things happening to the people, which is making their lives really hard. So what's happened in Goma and affected the rest of the country is that the government ordered the blocking of websites such as TikTok and Twitter and WhatsApp that was also cutting off or being available on one network but not on the other one, being available on one region, not the other region. So at some point we were not very sure whether this was nationwide or regionally specific, but the truth is that so many people were not able to access WhatsApp, to access TikTok, and to access Twitter, unless you are able to use a VPN that could help you at least access some of those services. What this means in a region that is affected by conflict, that means people rely on WhatsApp, especially for easy communication. And because the rebel group was progressing, coming from one region to another region, like people needed to be up to date, like on a minute base, saying, well, so they are now at X area. So the people towards which the rebel groups are advancing needed to get that piece of information in order to be prepared emotionally, but also economically, but also, checking on their loved ones in order to be ready. Because at the end of the day, what people faced was like, it's happened that they tell you, oh no, the rebel groups are now on your doors. And that means there's no way for you to leave your house because there are gunshots being heard from outside. So insecurity has come into your neighborhood, and there's no way for you to be able to move. To move either to go to a supermarket to buy foods or groceries. You can't move to go if you were not in your house at that moment. There's no way for you to leave that house to go join your own family. It's not possible for you to check on your sons, on your daughters, on your family members where they are if they are not home at that very moment when the invasion has reached your neighborhood. So WhatsApp being cut really affected people heavily. Because you can't, making regular calls, it's very expensive in the DRC. And so many people rely on WhatsApp to be able to make those calls. So imagine in such a chaos, you are reading on the TV that the M23 rebels is now in Goma. You can hear the gunshots and the fire happening outside, but you look around, some members of the family are not there. So you try to contact them, then to realize that WhatsApp is cut off, and so there's no way for you to call. And if you did not buy like phone call cards, then there's no way for you to communicate. So that's on one side. On the other side, the humanitarian community was also heavily affected because they all also rely on communications that they are receiving on either WhatsApp or either on Twitter to be able to assess the general situation of the humanitarian crisis in the region. Imagine you are coordinating the humanitarian efforts, but you are also not able to know whether the rebel groups have reached these neighborhoods or whether they are progressing towards these other neighborhoods, because Twitter, where you can get reliable information from credible news sites, is not accessible. You cannot check WhatsApp group to coordinate with your other colleagues on what you need to do or whether you need to serve this specific region or the other region. So WhatsApp people are using WhatsApp groups to coordinate even their actions. And if you can't access WhatsApp, that means you are also not able to easily do your work. Even journalists themselves. Journalists also rely on live updates from people who are on the ground. If people on the ground cannot communicate, that means the rest of the community across the country is also blocked. If you are, for instance, in Kinshasa, where I'm sitting now, and the people in Goma are those who are affected by the rebel group militia that is in the city, you are not able to get information from Goma in order to report and to know what's going on in the city. It's also affecting the news coverage, or being able to monitor or being able to say the truth about what is going on in the region. Because people are saying people are being killed, but the rebel group is saying, no, people are not being killed because we are protecting them. And people need proofs to be able to see this is really happening, the humanitarian disaster is happening in the city. But the easiest way to share pictures or to report on the humanitarian or the human rights violations that are happening in the region, most people would rely on taking pictures and channel them through social media and mostly on WhatsApp. So when WhatsApp is cut, when people are not able to access Twitter and even TikTok to be able to have like live coverage of what is happening in the region, then that means the human rights violations that are being perpetrated by the rebel groups stays uncovered. People won't be able to see, and international organization won't be able to also put pressure on those rebel groups in order to ask them or to incite them or to oblige them in even to stop killing people, to stop causing chaos and to stop causing those humanitarian issue and human rights violations they are covering. And so overall, the fact that Twitter was shut down, the fact that WhatsApp was also shut down, and even TikTok made it difficult not only on communication, but also to help people get access to the news that they need to know what really is going on in the region. I think that's what I'm able to share now, and I look forward to have access to questions. But the truth is, this did not last very long. People, we sometimes we are saying maybe 3 days, maybe 4 days total of this situation. But even 1 day is really terrible. Even 2 days is also terrible. And so we are at least thankful that our internet was back and is back across the country now. Although the humanitarian situation or the human rights violations are still continuing in the regions of Goma and Bukavu and even further in the eastern part of the country, but at least people are able to communicate and keep in touch with their loved ones. So thank you, Lengiwe.
Thank you, Essen. I like the fact that you are saying it doesn't matter even if it's a short period, even if it's 1 day, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't have to happen. We have not found any justification from the cases that we have seen for shutting down the internet. It's not something that should be happening when not even for an hour, even for a day, even for a month. It should not be happening. And thank you so much for shedding light on the situation in DRC, especially, how this affects, documentation, how it affects the work of human rights defenders, how it affects just our general lives, and also the journalists and other media practitioners, as we know that they play a very important role as the fourth estate. As we are rounding up our conversation, I just want to check whether whether Commissioner I don't know whether she's still on the call. Whether Commissioner, you have anything to say? I mean, you've had interventions from DRC, from Sudan, from Ethiopia, and from Mozambique, and what has taken place. We might not be having this internet shutdown like right now. There probably have been limited periods. But this is happening on the continent, and I don't know if Commissioner, you have any words following what we've heard from our colleagues from the countries that are represented. Let me give you the.
Thank you, Jubi. Yes, I've heard everyone, and I think it's very sad what's happening in Africa, especially. And as you were talking, I was wondering whether right for the internet should not be one of the human rights per se, like the right to food and everything else. So maybe we should consider that. I take note of your recommendations, but I think we need to come up with, I think they're very good, but we'll have to see how to put them as concretely as possible so that we can address that either in the form of a resolution, Jubi, or as see how we can move forward with these recommendations and see what is a way forward. But I agree with you that there cannot be any internet shut down even for a minute, and it is affecting the lives of people beyond what we really think. It's not just the right to communicate, it's the very survival of people that's at stake. So I think we need to put these probably, I don't know whether in a resolution or something, but we'll have to continue pondering upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for reiterating the position of the African Commission that we shouldn't be talking about internet shutdowns, like, I mean, in this day and age. And the declaration that you mentioned in your address says that, you know, states shall facilitate the rights of freedom of expression and access to information online, and ensure that all means necessary to exercise these rights, and also just recognize universal, equitable, affordable and meaningful access to the internet is necessary for freedom of expression and access to information to be realized. And also there is also an obligation for states to work with relevant stakeholders in adopting policies and laws and other measures to provide universal access to the internet. And we know that at UN level as of 2016, I think the resolution was passed on access to internet being a right. And we have seen some countries such as India where litigation has also led to articulations around internet, the access to the internet being a right as well. And I think on the continent as well, we should be moving towards that trajectory. In the same fashion, let me come to you, Felicia. I know you have done a lot of work and you know, around internet shutdowns. I just want to give you an opportunity, whilst we also wait for our colleagues to raise their hands and make you know, ask questions and also comment on internet shutdowns. If you are on the call and you want to speak, you can raise your hand. I'll give you the floor, or you can just write on the chat section. But let me give just Felicia the opportunity to just reflect on some of the issues that have been raised right now and some of the plans that you have as Access Now on addressing internet shutdowns.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think one thing I picked from all the conversation we've had today is the importance of us working together, because this is an issue not one actor can address. And so looking at the recommendations that were highlighted to the AU and also the ACHPR, I think it's important for us to continue to work with these bodies. As civil society and as researchers, academia, I think we have the information. We are in touch with the information and the people that are being impacted by this. So there should be a way for us to share this information with the various stakeholders, like the African Union, the Commissioner Topsisuno's office, and other relevant stakeholders, to be able to work together through the recommendations that we have identified as civil society. And I think what has worked and continues to be an area we want to see improvement is for more and more government stakeholders to issue statements whenever the internet is being disrupted. For instance, be it around conflict, around elections, around protests. We currently have the resolution from the ACHPR on elections and shutdowns. And so I think it should be unacceptable for any government going forward to disrupt internet access when it comes to elections. We also have the broad resolution from the ACHPR from 2016 that urges state actors to refrain from shutting down the internet even in times of crisis. So it's important for us to remind states and authorities about their obligation to respect people's rights, even in times of crisis, and to make sure that they adopt measures that actually amplify or facilitate people's access to the internet, to digital platforms, and to broadly benefit from the digital transformation efforts that we hear being spoken about by the same governments, rather than taking actions that go counter or that are counterproductive to these efforts to get more and more people to be connected, given that we all recognize the powerful role of the internet and digital communications in advancing development, advancing progress, advancing people's access to information, and the exercise of fundamental human rights. I'll just say that we are open to working with all of you on the call, and it's great to see that even though we were not in touch directly, somehow we were working together without even knowing that, and using information being produced or shared by either of us. And so I think that should continue to happen. And this webinar shouldn't just be the first, the last. I think we need to continue to use this space to raise the concerns that we have as civil society, as researchers, and also continue to engage with various stakeholders on the issue of internet shutdowns. We are open to working with everyone under the Keep It On campaign and coalition. So please reach out to me, to my colleagues. If you don't know how, Mingiwe is here to help. My email is in the presentation that I shared, and on the website, you would also know how to reach, and we can keep the conversation going. Thank you so much.
Indeed, the internet plays a very powerful role. If it does, why should we shut it down? And thank you also for reminding us of some of the resolutions that have been passed by the African Commission. There's one specifically looking at elections. There's the 2016 one. Is that enough? Is that enough? What else should the African Commission do? Remember, probably the 2016 resolution has been forgotten. It's almost a decade now with that resolution, but we're still having the internet shut down. So what should we do? Haptamu, you have your hand up. Please take the floor.
Okay, hello.
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you everyone for giving me this chance. I would like to thank you all the presenters for what they have gone through the state of internet shutdown across the African continent, and particularly in Ethiopia. I'm Tom Bramu from Ethiopia. I would like to thank you, my colleague Henok Shafri from he has gone through the state of internet shutdown in Ethiopia. Normally, it is known that access to internet has far-reaching impact on the promotion and the protection of various human rights. At the same time, internet shutdown has significant impacts on human rights, especially on the time of digital ages, where each and every activity or action depends on internet. So having said this, I have one question for Mr. Henok Shagre for what he has done through the state of internet shutdown in Ethiopia. Normally, I don't have a doubt for what he has presented as far as the picture or the pattern of internet shutdown in Ethiopia. But my question is that internet shutdown in Ethiopia has been implementing in various forms and for various reasons, for example, during the conflicts, during the exam, during the election. My point is that most of the time, government tries to justify internet shutdown from different perspectives. For example, in order to save societies from fake information or misinformation. This is critically important, especially when digital literacy and fact-checking trend is very low in Ethiopia. So how do you see this justification? Because internet shutdown in some cases is especially important to save nation from unnecessary information or misinformation. So how can we say this, see this justification? The other point is that in Ethiopia, internet shutdown has been implemented during the exam just to avoid exam cheating. Though it has a significant impact on accessing information, on the other hand, it is greatly important to avoid exam cheating during the exam. So how we can measure this justification? The other question,
Make it brief.
maybe the last question is that what are the challenges? For example, in Ethiopia, we don't have such legislative or policy and institutional frameworks to regulate these kinds of issues. So what are the challenges? These are my main question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those questions. Henok, please take the floor and briefly respond to the issues that have been raised.
Thank you so much, Kilingiwe, and also thank you so much, Haftamu, for raising very important question. Yes, I totally understand that we always need to have a balance. And I think our national as well as international human rights commitments require the government to take into account both interests. I mean, I'm not saying the internet or freedom of expression in general is something absolute, but when it comes to limitation, there must be a certain standard that should be complied with, including the three-part test. When it comes to Ethiopia, as you all know, we don't have a specific legislation that governs how internet shutdown can be implemented. So I think the problem in Ethiopia is we don't have law to allow when to provide the conditions that need to be satisfied in order to put a shutdown measure or in order to implement a shutdown measure. So that is the first problem or deficit in the Ethiopian legal system. We need to have that laws. Without law, there is no way for us to put legitimate or legal restriction upon access to internet, because as we all know, the human rights in general and the right to freedom of expression in particular can only be limited or can only be justifiably limited through priorly adopted legislation that mandates such shutdown. In Ethiopia, we don't have such legislation, and I think it is very critical for the government to think about that. So the first step before we talk about proportionality or balancing of interest is to have the legislation in order for the government to justify its internet shutdown measure. And the other issue is lack of transparency. I mean, in most instances, internet shutdowns are implemented out of nowhere, like without even giving adequate notice. So that is another issue I think the Ethiopian government should give attention. Yes, I understand that there is issue of misinformation and other challenge in Ethiopia context, and Ethiopia is not an exception in this regard. It is a broader issue. But my question, or I'm trying to answer this in a way of like by raising another question. Are we able to stop that misinformation because of the shutdown? I don't think so, because there are a lot of misinformation going on online because of the shutdowns as well, because there is no truth, there is no proper way for people to get information about what's going on in conflict situation. So this lead many people either intentionally or with negligence or by different contexts, like to release misinformation and disinformation. So I think the most important thing for me to say here is we need the legislation first, and then we can talk about how can we balance the different interests regarding freedom of expression and other issues, including national security and pace and order, as my colleague Haptamu said. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I muted? Thank you very much, Henok, for responding to that and raising issues around the limitations, and the international human rights law and frameworks are very clear on the limitations, and already the special rapporteur has also articulated those limitations, and we need to bring them into our national legislation so that they can guide government actions around human rights, and so that whenever they implement or take into or put in action some of these practices, they are guided by the international human rights law and standards. And also you raise the issue of transparency as well, and also balancing interest is a very important issue that you are raising, Henok, and thank you for that. But what is important is that beyond having a law, beyond having a framework, there has to be effective implementation. That robust implementation is very important. And we have, not only just on internet shutdowns, but we have on many other issues where we have adopted laws and standards and failed in implementing them, and which I think is the most important issue when it comes to the legal framework. Asen, I don't know whether you have any interventions as we close.
I think it's just a way of saying, of course, to salute again the work the Keep Your Own Coalition is doing with Access Now, helping us to have this depository, one. But second, to also thanks to the statements, I'd like to emphasize on the statements that the Keep Your Own Coalition is putting out as a way to encourage other organizations to sign on them. But also these are playing some important roles into the global community, not only raising awareness about the situation happening in a specific country, but also authorities get to understand that you are doing this, but we are also watching, and not only the citizen in your country are watching, but the whole world is watching. Sometimes some countries they only think on one particular side of the story. When the states impose internet shutdowns, it's mostly security grounds. They say, well, to preserve people's security, or to preserve the less dissemination of disinformation or fake news, but they forget that at the same time, they're also infringing on people's rights. And statements like those from the Keep Your Own Coalition are really helpful, as it elaborates more on what are the other consequences of such an act. And we have seen some countries like my country now making public commitments saying, yes, we won't shut the internet like what was done back in 2019. So we need to keep on pushing. We should not grow weary. We need to keep on pushing and fighting. And maybe one day African states or the international community will stop using internet shutdowns, because the expected results actually has never been reached, but the consequence has always been bigger than what people think of. So thank you again for this platform, and thanks for having us.
Indeed, let's keep pushing. Let us not grow weary. We will definitely get to a situation where this is universally recognized that there's no justification for shutting down the internet. Your last words, Razan.
Hi all. I think my last words should be a plea that internet should not be used as a tool of war, as we have seen in our different African countries, and specifically in Sudan. And it should not be used as a mean to hide atrocities, because eventually it will come out, maybe years later. We always compare the atrocities that have been committed in Darfur in 2003 compared to now. We always say that it could be even worse and more vicious than what's happening now. But the difference is now we have internet. Now we get to see what is happening, unlike in the past. And also it's a plea for everyone in the field to keep advocating for internet access. Thank you.
Let's keep advocating for internet access. Let's continue condemning internet shutdowns. As we are closing, I also just want to acknowledge Sanjay Monaheng, who says, thank you for the excellent eye-opening session, and for them, the greatest takeaway which runs through all the presentations is that shutdowns facilitate impunity to the perpetrators to the detriment of the people. And this also obviously violates their human and people's rights. Sanjay was a commissioner, glad to hear, of the ACHPR until 2009, and wishes to congratulate the Commission and their partners for continuously positively interpreting the provisions of the treaty, which is the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. I don't know whether, Sanjay, you are able to just vocalize your appreciation very briefly. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, please. It's a pleasure to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to thank the presenters. I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me in particular. And I also wish to congratulate the special rapporteur. I followed her work together with other rapporteurs, and she's doing fantastic. So I'm there. I'm there with the commission. It's my commission. And thank you so much for inviting me. Thanks a lot. I live in Pretoria. I am the High Commissioner of Botswana, or Ambassador of Botswana to South Africa.
We'll definitely get in touch with you so we can engage on this issue, since you are just here close by. Thank you so much for joining us, one of our commissioners at the African Commission. And thank you for the work that you did when you were at the African Commission during your time. And thank you for continuously also supporting from where you are the work of the African Commission. And thank you so much, colleagues. We have come to the end of our webinar, where we have managed to have this conversation. We thought we've been talking about internet shutdowns in general, but we thought today, let's just look at the conflict-affected regions in the continent, and look at how, internet shutdowns have manifested and how these have affected internet shutdowns, and also to bring in the body of the African Commission that we thought is of the African Union that we thought is very relevant to this conversation, the African Commission, to also participate in this discussion. And we hope that, this is not just an end. This is the beginning of a very important conversation as we continuously see conflicts unfolding, unfortunately, on the continent. Let's also continuously advocate for access to the internet. Let's continuously campaign against internet shutdowns, one step at a time, one day at a time. Internet shutdowns have no justification on the continent. Thank you so much, Commissioner Topsy, for staying throughout the session. We really appreciate. We know we have a very busy schedule, but you were able to be available today. And we'll really take it upon your word that you said you are open to collaborate. You are happy to continue working on these issues, and as stakeholders, we are here to work with the African Commission to ensure that human rights are enjoyed offline and online. And thank you, Access Now, for the work that you are doing on internet shutdowns. It's really appreciated. And I think you've seen really from our colleagues in the comment section that they are really interested in the work that we are doing, and please continue doing the work. And colleagues also reach out to Access Now for any of collaborations around internet shutdowns. And thank you so much to our excellent presenters from Ethiopia, Henok from DRC, Asen, Razan from Sudan, and also Tanzania from Mozambique, for just shedding light into the situation in these specific countries, so that we have an appreciation of what exactly is happening in those countries, and also for the recommendations that you proposed for what can be done in light of the internet shutdowns that are taking place, not only in your countries, but also in other countries as well. And we appreciate everybody for the contributions, for the support. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. We have come to the end of this webinar. We really appreciate you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Finn. It's nice seeing you.